I just want to reintroduce myself. It is my pleasure today to introduce my friend Pam Foreman with Susquehanna Service Dogs and Sergeant Major retired Bob Lighty, who is an advocate and ambassador for SSD. You can't see him other than if you look under the table, but Sergeant Major is here with his service dog Tyrod, who is now just moving about just a little bit, so I think he likes the carpeted floor. So just briefly about both. So Sergeant Major Bob Lighty retired, served in the military for over 34 years in the United States Marine Corps as well as the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. His first assignment as a Marine security guard was at the American Embassy in Mogadishu, Somalia. His second and final assignment as a Marine security guard was at the American Embassy in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. When his enlistment was complete, SGM Lighty returned to the U.S. and enlisted in the PA Army National Guard with the 28th Infantry Division Artillery. Sergeant Major Lighty has held multiple positions in intelligence and fire support, and his additional deployments include Bosnia, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Some of his awards and decorations include the Legion of Merit, Bronze Star with 2 oak leaf clusters, the Purple Heart, among many others. If I had to read all of Sergeant Major's, we'd have to have him back. Sergeant Major Lighty resides in Middletown with his wife Amy and SSD Tyrod, who is his service dog. My friend Pam Foreman, who some of you I think have met before, is the Director of Gifts and Donor Relations at Susquehanna Service Dogs. Pam was the Executive Director of SSD, which is a division of Keystone Human Services, from 2014 to 2020. Prior to that, she worked 23 years at Keystone Human Services in their Intellectual Disability Services. Since November of 2020, she's been the Director of Gifts and Donor Relations for KHS, recently completing a campaign to build the new training center that Glenn just mentioned. So if you would please welcome Sergeant Major Lighty, Pam, and SSD Tyrod.
Thank you very much. And that was 33 years in ID services. You were just trying to be nice that I'm not quite that old. But
I saw what you gave me.
we're really happy to be here. Sean's been such a, well, he's a board member at Keystone Human Services, and he's on committees. And I was telling Bob Lighty earlier that he's one of those guys that we really love having on because he gets things done, he makes connections for us, and he has a lot of energy around whatever he does. So appreciate him asking us here. Like Glenn said, he's been out, and we would love to have anybody visit. So if you're interested in that, I think at some point Sean may forward an email to all of you giving a little bit of information that we won't talk about here, but that's a way to get in touch with me as well and make those arrangements if you want to. I am going to pass this over to Bob first, and then I'll just wrap up with a few things at the end. But I do want to say thank you to this club because you were a sponsor at our most recent fundraising event, the Perfect Pairing Wine event, which was held in June, and you helped us raise over $58,000. It was actually $58,031 that we raised at that event. So that really supports the work that we do all across Keystone Human Services, and especially Susquehanna Service Dogs, which is part of the company that does not get any money anywhere else from the government or insurance. So we do rely on sponsorships like that and fundraising opportunities like that. So thank you very much. And now I'm going to pass it over to Bob, and then I'll pop back up for a few minutes afterwards.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Lighty. I was a retired sergeant major. I still am. And the way I'd like to start this story out is to let you know how I got involved with SSD, Susquehanna Service Dogs, and how this all came about. The first part of my military career wasn't as tough as the last 10 years. My last 10 years, I've seen 2 deployments in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq. And one of the things I noticed as a leader, the endless hours that you have to work, the concern that you have for the other service members to make sure they get back the same way they got there in country. But what I found out, which was a harsh reality, that doesn't happen. So after my first deployment, I was an Operations Sergeant Major for the Joint Special Operation Task Force in Afghanistan. I had Navy SEALs, Green Beret, pararescue from the Air Force, and then International Special Forces. Within 6 months, I lost 6 of those guys. 6. That was tough, because that's the first time I had, under my leadership, that we had lost anyone. So when I came home, I just noticed something was different. I wasn't the same Bob. I wasn't the jokester. I was serious. And I would just come home after work and I would sit in my lazy boy recliner. It probably took a month or 2 before I got back to what the new normal looked like, that I could get out and I could go do things. So I'd just been in Afghanistan in 2003. And in 2004, I was asked to go back to Afghanistan, this time as an embedded trainer with the Afghan National Army. I was supposed to teach them field artillery. That didn't happen. I was involved in infantry operations, patrolling, and to try to develop the Afghan National Army. So I was only in country probably a month and a half, and I was in a place called the Rot Market. I had a bad day of work, and that's the way I'll put it. I had a bad day of work. I was medevaced out to Landstuhl. They couldn't do what they needed there. They were overcrowded, so I made my way back to Walter Reed. I had surgery, and because at that time you suffer from what's called survivor's guilt. You have all these things going through your mind. You're back there, and your men are, over there in Afghanistan, trying to fight the good fight. So within 4 months, I went back. This is after surgery, and I figured out what I needed to do to get approved, certified to go back. And when I found out once I got in country, I was back too soon. My legs kept going numb. You have all that kit on, you have your vest, you have an assault pack, but I learned one thing: you need to lead from the front. I wasn't looking for anyone's sympathy. I just wanted to lead from the front, and I had great guys around me. And that deployment, from that point on, was very tough for me. It not only was emotional pain, it was the physical pain now that I had. But I needed to get up there every day, put a smile on, and do what was asked of me and of the unit that I was with. So then when I went home, I noticed something really changed. I would go and I would sit in my recliner, and next to my recliner was a window, and I would just open the blind maybe 2 inches. And that was my little safe area. That's where I could relax. And that's when I started having bad thoughts, because the physical pain and the emotional pain at times was so overwhelming. I was a sergeant major, so who do you turn to talk to? So I thought this was going to be okay. So instead of taking a month or 2 to get back, it probably took 6 months to get back to where I felt, like everything was going to be okay. But I still had the pain. I still had the emotional pain, the survivor's guilt, the triggers, the fight and flight. And one thing I will never forget. I will never forget the sights, the sounds, the smells, or the taste of combat. The only sense that I didn't include out of the 5 senses was touch. And this is what I learned where my triggers came from. The different smells, the different sounds. So I thought, hey, I'm almost to the end of my career. I'm done. There are no more combat deployments. Nope, I got the call. I need to go with this artillery unit. They need the leadership. I'm going to Iraq. I was in Iraq doing a left seat, right seat ride with the outgoing unit. And in the first week, I had a 21-year-old become a double amputee. And I just thought to myself, here we go again. I'm only a week or two into it, and I still have a whole year. So then the next day we had a rollover with an MRAP, and I had soldiers injured, and I'm just like, here we go. So I got through that deployment, and I got home, and this time it was bad. I still had something going on from the other surgeries. I didn't know what was going on. I know I had a lot of pain. I know now that I was in a bad place. I was in a really bad place. And like I said, who do you talk to as a sergeant major? I didn't turn to anyone. I wasn't married. I wasn't going to talk to my family. And I wasn't going to talk to my 2 boys about it at the time that were home. So the suicidal ideation became overwhelming. I thought, hey, I'm done. I had no hope. I was losing hope. I was like, why am I going to get up when I feel this bad? And I couldn't do those things that I loved. I used to love to run. I loved the outdoors. I just couldn't do it. I had a traumatic brain injury. When I was at Walter Reed, my balance, I still remember Kathy Ambrose, she was my physical therapist. She said, Bob, you look like a blade of grass blowing in the wind. And I just had to laugh. I mean, hell, I didn't even drink. And that's what I felt like, a drunk, you know? So she really helped me, and I got back to where I am. But long story short, I was in a really bad place. I went to the Lebanon VA for an appointment. And I met a guy that had a service dog. And I asked him all these questions. I said, hey, you know, where did you get this service dog? How did the service dog help you? And he went into detail, and he told me about Susquehanna service dogs. So that gave me hope. I actually started feeling good that day. I went home, got on the computer, filled out the application. Got a notification, I was in the process. Here's the sticking point. It was 4 years before I went to meet the dogs. But I held on to that hope. So I went to meet the dogs, and it was 3 dogs, Merlin, Hot Rod, and Tie Rod. And Merlin was a yellow lab, listened to all the cues, did everything. Now I'm getting ready for another surgery. I wasn't in a good place. I had a lot of pain. Merlin had so much energy, he basically jumped up in my lap at the end, and I was like, no, I'm done. I can't, this is too much, you know? So then here's Hot Rod, this beautiful black lab. I found out afterwards, Hot Rod is Tie Rod's brother. Hot Rod didn't listen to a thing I had to ask him. Beautiful dog, so I'm glad whoever ended up with Hot Rod, you know, got a good dog. So then here came Tie Rod. Tie Rod executed all the cues there, and at the end you get to interact with Tie Rod. We had a great interaction, and then Lauren, the trainer, was off to the side. So now it's a recall because it's time for Tie Rod to go. Lauren calls for Tie Rod, but Tie Rod got up, went in between my legs, and put his head on my lap. And my point here is, you don't pick service dogs pick you. And from that point on, I had hope, and I was happy, and I asked a lot of questions, and I could feel it was changing my life. And then I got to go about a year later after a surgery, because we had to delay a little bit because of my surgery, I had some issues. But Tie Rod, after training, I got placed June 20th, 2018 with Tie Rod after a 21-day training. He not only changed my life, he saved my life. And that way, from that point on, I became a spokesperson for the Susquehanna Service Dogs. Because Susquehanna Service Dogs is a life-changing organization. And like I said, in my case, it was a life-saving organization. And I was and I was happy to be a co-chairman for that capital campaign to raise that $3 million. Because hopefully everyone in this room can get to go see that state-of-the-art 13,000 square foot facility and see what it does for people and how it changes their lives. So basically, that's my story. I had a great career, but unfortunately it came with, you know, some growing, and I'm a much better person today. And I appreciate everyone, the invitation here to listen to my story, but anytime that you see someone with a service dog, just understand that that dog has changed that person's life. And getting them back out there to do those things that they couldn't. Before I had Tyrod, I never went on vacation. I went on vacation. We flew on airplanes. Because of an incident, I don't like supermarkets. But now I can go to the supermarket. Do I go there a lot? No, but I still go. And he provides me space. If I fall, he can help me up. He can find the telephone. He can find my wife. He can pick things up for me. So that's the difference that he has made in my life. So with that, I'd like to end. If anyone has any questions, I would take any questions. Other than that, I'm going to turn it back to Pam.
How do you fly with a service dog? Do they have the seat beside you?
No, what happens is, that's a good question. The question was, how do you fly with a service dog? You have to coordinate with the airlines, one, because they want certain paper that it's a certified dog that has the shots. But probably like 2 weeks before the flight, I call and I get a bulkhead seat. That way there's no one in front of me. And because of the bar underneath the seat for your foot, it's usually my wife, myself, and then the person that's next to me. They fall in love with Tyrod, so they don't mind. So he's just laying right there between the bulkhead and us.
Okay.
I've had him on buses, and it's cramped. And these service dogs are contortionists. They fit in places, and they love it, you know. So, I mean, look at him. He stayed there. That's what they're trained for. And that 2 years of training is a little over $30,000 to get one service dog. And I don't want to steal Pam's thunder, but you know, that's a lot of money, but it's worth it. So, yes, sir.
And is Tyrod trained to do something specific
Yes.
to you or in general?
Yes, that's a good question. Tyrod was, once that's part of the application process, you know, what your disabilities are and how they can help you. And then all service dogs in the beginning have to learn basic cues to sit, to stay, and it's not only verbal, but it's with hand cues. And then they go to with advanced training. So maybe someone in a wheelchair, and they're gonna learn how to open doors. I mean, we have dogs that help people get dressed, get them out of bed, get them undressed, do laundry. So the things that you can teach a dog are incredible. And because the labs, they're food motivated. So if you have a clicker and some food, I could teach him to get me water out of the fridge and bring it to me. But I don't misuse him like that. So, any more questions? Yes, sir.
I was in Wisconsin in a bar with some friends,
No. That's a shocking.
and one of the people sitting next to us was a blind person, and they had a service dog.
A guide dog.
Okay, guide dog, correct. And the guy's wife came to pick him up, drove into the parking lot, and the dog stood up, and he said, "Oh, my wife's here." And we all looked at him like, how do you know your wife's here? The dog knew the car pulled in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Could hear the car, knows the sound of that car. And that's just amazing. They had to train that dog to do something like that. That's crazy. You know?
The difference between a guide dog and a service dog is I'm asking him to provide a task for me. A guide dog is going to do it for you automatically. He knows that he's going to stop you before you walk into traffic. He's going to make sure that it's okay. So that's the difference, but it is amazing. And dogs are just incredible in how they can change people's lives.
How old is Tyrod, and how long do dogs remain as service dogs?
That's another good question. Tyrod's 6. His birthday was April 25th. As long as he wants to work, he could be 10, he could be 11, he could be 12. But one day he's going to get up and say, "I'm not going to work today." So, but at that point, I get to keep him as my dog, as my pet. And the dogs that help people with mobility that are in the wheelchair, sometimes they burn out a little bit quicker, because you got to remember, they're opening every door, closing every door, they're much more active, you know, throughout the day. Where with my issues, he works, but it's not as intense as those dogs. And we have a program called Successor Dogs, so once we know that that dog's getting close to being not in service, you go on the list so you can get another dog to help you.
But it wouldn't take you 3 years
No,
or 4 years
no.
to get the next
And that's the
dog.
other thing with the new facility, that's what we're hoping that it does. We lost dogs because of kennel stress. Now they have their own runs, it's climate control, they have an area, it's awesome. So before, what was it, Pam, 45% of the dogs would make it into service? So we're hoping it's more than that. Yes, sir.
I have a great granddaughter that trains, she's on her third one. Her first one went through everything well and got homesick. So she has that one. She had got the second one, that was a black lab. And he went through his training just fine and he's at work now. She has the third one. She's in the 4-H club. Is this the same organization that she's working for?
I'm not sure. We do have puppy raisers, and that's a great point. Like, we rely on volunteer puppy raisers to get the dogs when they're 9 weeks old. They have them till about 18 months old, till they go into advanced training Monday through Friday, and then they have them on the weekends, and then have them. It takes about 2 full years to get them ready. So those volunteer raisers come to classes once a week for the first 9 weeks, and then a couple of times a month after that. So it could be us. We have people. There's usually about 120 dogs in training at any given time. And so we have about 120 volunteer puppy raisers. We have over 400 active volunteers. Very small paid staff, a lot of volunteers that help us do what we do. So, yes.
When does the dog get his own time? You know, go smell things and
That's
just
a really,
chase things.
that's another really good question, because one of the, even during the application process, Bob probably was told that it's really important that he can either do it himself or have somebody support him so the dog can get out for regular walks, exercise, some downtime. And they are quite different. If the vest comes off, all of a sudden that dog's running around the room and saying hi to everybody. So they really know when it's time to work and not. And again, some dogs will have to be on more, even when they're at home with their partner. You know, they may still need to be getting things, paying attention, but that's a really important piece of it, and it's really stressed from the very beginning of the application process that dog needs to have that downtime.
How many dogs are partnered a year?
About 25 or 30, we're hoping to bump that up. This past year, it's a little lower because the pandemic really did impact us, I think just like it did a lot of people. Our dogs were not able to go out in public a lot, and that's a really critical piece of their getting prepared to become a service dog. They have to be comfortable in those environments, they have to socialize, and when you weren't going to things, even the grocery store as much, or going to work with their volunteer puppy raiser, that we're noticing that difference. We thought we would, and we noticed it, and we also decreased our breeding a little bit during that time because we knew there were gonna be issues. So it's kind of starting to go back up, but I would say average 25 to 30. And we do provide dogs for people with autism, mobility dogs, persons that use wheelchairs, balance, hearing dogs, PTSD, military related, non-military related. We also have dogs in facilities like schools. We have an oncology clinic has one, a nursing home has one. The Children's Hospital of Philadelphia has one of our dogs. So we have a lot of dogs in facilities as well. Dogs that don't make it, but we also know want to be working dogs. We have a great relationship with law enforcement, and they go on to become detection dogs. In fact, we're the CIA's first choice for their explosive detection dogs, so we provide a lot of dogs to them. Well, it depends. The pandemic hit them a little bit too. They had to slow down on their training, but so we know some dogs, you know, would not be happy just being pets. The ones that Bob talked about that don't make it or tell us they just don't want to be a service dog, they either get stressed out in public or they can't stop chasing that squirrel or something like that. then the puppy raiser has the first choice of adopting them, and if not, there's people that can adopt those dogs. Any other questions?
Is there a certain breed you look for or a certain breed you avoid?
Well, we mostly use labs and sometimes golden retrievers and sometimes a mix. Labs are very food motivated, like Bob said, and we use all positive approaches training. So it's none of the traditional aversive kind of training, and we use food to motivate. And it's interesting, the CIA does the same thing. So when our dogs go to them, they're very comfortable with that kind of training as well. So labs will do that. They also transfer their affection a little bit more easily than other dogs. So they can go from the family or the volunteer that has had the litter for the first 8 weeks of their life, and then they can come into our facility for a week when they're 8 weeks old, and they get tested and temperament tested and eye exams. They go with their puppy raiser. They swap sometimes throughout that, just so dogs get used to other people. They come into training, they go with their partner. So labs do that even a little easier than golden retrievers. They also have great public persona, like people, they're friendly dogs, and they have a very soft mouth, so our dogs can like pick up a dime and hand it to you, if they need to do that for their partner, or get the water out of the refrigerator without mauling it, or carry a lunch bag for somebody, or carry groceries. So labs are great for that. They're primarily what we use. There was another question?
I was surprised when we were at the Perfect Pairing, the different dogs. Wasn't there a Saint Bernard?
That was somebody that was there as a guest that had their service dog, and she was actually at the chocolate ball too, our under fundraiser with her dog. We at one time had an owner train program, and we're talking about whether that can come back or not, and that's where, say you wanted to have your small dog evaluated to see whether you could go through training at our facility for that dog to become your service dog. So we had a German Shepherd, and we had a poodle, and so every once in a while we will, but that's the owner trained dogs. And we have our own breeding program. Okay.
A couple things. One, I'm very beer motivated, so if you need to use me. Number two, what percent of your place dogs are with military people? And have you heard of the organization Canines for Warriors?
The Warrior Canine Connection, or Canines for Warrior. I know Warrior Canine Connection is in Maryland. That's one. One of the things, we're an Assistance Dogs International accredited program. So we do a lot of collaboration with other ADI accredited programs. And Warrior Canine Connection, we do a lot with them. We share breeding stock. Our dogs, we have actually, one of our stud dogs was picked out of the entire country to go over to the Netherlands to start the international breeding program of that. And he actually got stuck over there. He's supposed to come home about a week after everything shut down during the pandemic. So he actually spent about 1.5 years traveling all over Europe, having a really good time and really increasing their genetic lines over there. And go back to, you had what was that?
But you guys, what percent is?
So it's about, I would say the last time I checked, and I'm not being the director anymore, I'm not always on top of the things, but it was about 15%. So we have that. And right now we're really trying to do more outreach to get veterans to know we're here.
And one of the critical things that Pam just said, being Assistant Dog International accredited means a lot, especially when you're going through the VA, because they have what's called veterinarian health insurance benefit. And if you're not a service dog, like Susquehanna Service Dogs, and accredited by ADI, you're not getting it.
That's a great point. Right now, the VA only recognizes service dogs that come from an Assistance Dogs International accredited program to get the full benefits. And that's because our standards are really high. We have to, we get like inspections, and we have to live up to a very high standard for our dogs, for the people getting the dogs, for how we do business. Any other questions?
And one of the things that I would say, Tyrod always brings up conversation, and it's positive. There's people in your family that may have epilepsy, that may be suffering from PTSD. It's not just wartime vets. It's the person that unfortunately may be the victim of rape, domestic violence, a bad car accident, something, an operation that went bad, and they can make a big difference in that person's life. I mean, it's a difference between night and day.
That's a great point. We had a young woman who actually, we place dogs in Pennsylvania and some surrounding states. We try not to travel more than 4 or 5 hours simply because funding, you know, and we have to travel and maintain contact. We follow the teams for the working life of the dog. The first year we probably have at least 18 to 30 check-in points, and then after that it's at least annually. We provide twice a month what we call tune-ups, and people can get on Zoom, or we go to homes whenever there's issues. So we try not to travel too far, but this woman lived outside of Pennsylvania but came to us and had been horrifically abused by someone, and like Bob, when he was experiencing it, could not leave her house. And she got her dog, and probably within a month sent us this just beautiful story of what her life was like. She was back, she was jogging again, she was going to events, and so it truly does change people's lives. If you're someone with epilepsy, you have, this one woman who wanted to live alone could live alone, and she would have grand mal seizures, and the dog learned to press the med alert button if that happened. And what we do for training is we will kind of mimic whatever the issue is, so the dog recognizes it and can respond. Whether it's somebody having, how does your PTSD manifest physically? Whether it's your leg shaking or you're pulling at your ear. And for her, it was they taught what that seizure looked like, and she'd wake up and the EMTs would be in her house working on her because her dog could alert that. So for her to have the independence to live alone was really important. So there's so many things. One, the parents of a child with autism, their goal was they wanted to sit through a church service, and they just wanted to be able to do that. Like, enjoy the hymns, enjoy the sermon, and with their child, they couldn't do that. And after they got their dog, literally 3 weeks later said, we can sit through a church service now because the dog is doing what they're supposed to do. Something that simple changed their whole life. So it goes on and on. There's a lot that we could talk about. Like Bob said, it costs over $30,000 for us to breed and raise and train and place each dog and follow them. We asked people to pay a $5,000 fee for service, but based on their financial situation, we would ask a minimum of $800. We don't get money from the government or insurance, so that's why this is important to us. Like, just having the opportunity to talk about what we do. There's sponsorship opportunities. You guys already did that for a perfect pairing. We have a golf tournament coming up, which Sean is very well aware of, in October. There's sponsorship opportunities there. So not just for this club, but if you know anyone who's interested in things like that, you can name a puppy for either $2,500 or $5,000, and there's all kinds of fun stuff with that. So there are opportunities, and we'd be more than happy to talk about them as well. Yes?
Where is your facility?
It's in Grantville. So it's really, it's actually on the Palmyra side of 22, so in my mind, it would be more Palmyra than Grantville. It's about a 56-acre piece of property, and we worked out of a converted horse barn until this, and we're at, and this is not, like, this is true, we're world renowned. We have a great reputation internationally, and I always was just amazed that we're doing it out of a horse barn. And sometimes people from the Assistance Dogs International community would come. We hosted something one time, so they came from all over the country, and they walked in and they're like, this is what you're working out of? They had no idea. So that's where we are, and we'd love to have anybody come visit.
Did you ever have a Chihuahua as a service dog?
No.
Glenn?
Oh, does he have? Oh yes, I remember you talking about.
He
Yeah.
hasn't been trained very
It's his emotional support animal.
Yeah. So again, puppy raisers are needed. If you know anyone, you can get on our website. And again, if Sean does forward an email to you, it would have the link to our website, how you can get involved. And also Keystone Human Services, because we are a program of Keystone Human Services, and they're changing lives every day for so many people. And something you may not be aware of, Keystone Human Services has services in Moldova, Keystone Moldova. So from day one of the crisis there, we've been supporting the refugees with food, items that, hygiene items that are needed, helping people with disability figure out. I mean, imagine that, you're all of a sudden fleeing your country for safety and you have a family member with a disability. So there's so many things, and we've been there supporting that, and that's something that a lot of people don't know, that we also have that international presence. A lot of that information I can share. Again, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, please feel free. I'd be happy to have people out visit, answer questions, and talk to you. And I know Bob would too. He and I have been, I think, several years now, obviously, and we've been doing things together. But his story, I mean, you really could stop after him, right? Because it's very compelling, his experience, and we're hoping the new facility means people won't be waiting for 4 years for their dog. So thank you again for having us. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you guys very much, Sergeant Major. Great story. It's very inspiring, and appreciate your service. So when I was at Susquehanna Service Dogs,